Welcome to the Fashion Masterclass. I'm Angela Taylor-George, and I just wanted to let you know the episode you're about to watch was recorded pre-coronavirus. So it's all about jobs in the fashion industry. And I really want to be sensitive because I know that this is a time that many people are not employed and have a lot of job uncertainty. So I chose to air this episode because I'm hoping that if you want to get into fashion, that you could see all the jobs that are available to you. And if you're in fashion, maybe you want to get into another area of fashion. So I really wanted to air this so you can basically see what the opportunities may hold for you. And this will pass. You know, we're going through unprecedented times, and we will definitely get through this. And it may be, several months and, weeks and months, but for sure, we will get back on track. As Americans, we're strong. We have resolve, high resolve, and we will get through this. I will be doing a live Q&A Zoom call. That's video conferencing Zoom call, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with Zoom, being cooped up at home these days. So it'll be on April 1st at 6 p.m. It'll be live Q&A with me. Ask me anything you want about the industry, and I will try to answer the best I can. And it'll be great. I'm really looking forward to seeing you and hearing your questions. So again, that's April 1st, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The link will be down in the description for the Zoom call. So class is in session. Let's dive in. I hope you got value from the 5-part series, How to Start a Fashion Brand. And if you didn't get a chance to watch that, I really suggest you do, because I give a lot of nuggets, wisdom nuggets on how to start a brand, and if that's what you're interested in doing. So I would encourage you to watch parts 1 through 5 on how to start a fashion brand. And also, if you're getting value, please subscribe, like, and share the content. There are so many jobs in the fashion industry. I've literally tried doing this episode a couple of times before, and when I was done, I'm like, there are so many jobs that I did not talk about. So I'm gonna try to do it this time in its entirety. Also, if you're getting value, please subscribe, like, and share the content. In the industry, in fashion, you have everything from like retailers to wholesalers, to apparel brands, to content creators, to editors, to influencers, and then people that are doing finance stuff, like CFOs of companies and things like that. And then you have production people. So I'll just try to start out like in a fashion brand, for instance. So designers, you have pattern makers, you have cutters, sewers, people that are handling marketing and social media. You have production team, so production manager and assistants, bookkeeping staff, financial team. You have sales team if you're doing wholesale. You have customer service team. If you're going direct to consumer, you have someone who runs the website, who uploads content, who you need people doing content creation, doing photo shoots, doing copy. And then, in doing photo shoots, you have photographers, you have models, you have stylists, you have hair and makeup, you have set designers, prop stylists, location scouts, and then content creators, people who are doing video, people in social media, people who are managing social media accounts, so they're commenting, liking, sharing, uploading content, and doing giveaways and collaborations and things like that. So people that are involved, so social media managers. In wholesale, you have showrooms, so you have salespeople in the showroom, sales teams in the showrooms. If you're in retail, there's buyers and planners and store managers, and thinking of, say, in a department store, creative directors, and then also in fashion brand, you have creative director as well in the fashion brand, the creative director. The design team works under the creative director. Direct to consumer, you have people that are doing analytics, you have people that are doing Facebook ads, digital marketing people that are doing digital marketing. So that could just be like just buying the ads and running the ads and making sure that that's, you know, all working smoothly. And then once again, the content creators, you know, creating content for the ads, you know, whether it's digital, whether it's video, or it's, you know, static imagery for the Facebook ads and Instagram ads as well. So, and any other ads, really, if you're, you know, some big companies are still doing billboard advertising, they're doing, you know, magazine advertising, though not as much these days. Also, there's working for a magazine, you know, editorial, so, you know, being an editor, or also being a copywriter, so, you know, someone who's writing copy, someone who's editing, someone who's going around the market and seeing all the, you know, like picking all the best things that they want to have in the magazine, so you have editors. And then, of course, if you want to open a retail store, you know, so you could open your own retail store, so that's one thing, or do your own website and maybe buy from different brands on a website, or selling products on like Poshmark. That you have vintage clothing, that's another area that you could be in. You could be in vintage, where you're, you know, doing vintage trade shows and selling to the designer market, to fashion designers who are going for inspiration. So, so you could be acquiring, you know, vintage. You could be doing vintage pop-ups, things like that. So that's, you know, that's really big right now with all the sustainable discussion and, you know, recycling and being sustainably responsible. Vintage is definitely seeing a huge resurgence. I mean, a lot of people want to wear vintage. It's huge. It's a huge market. When I mentioned Poshmark, I mean selling on Poshmark, buying and selling. People are buying and selling on eBay and, you know, different platforms. So there's like, you know, going thrift shopping, finding things, buying, or even just recycling your own clothing and selling it on Poshmark. I don't know if that's like a, you know, I mean, people are making businesses out of it. I mean, people are definitely making a business out of like Poshmark. They'll have like a Poshmark boutique, or Etsy is another platform that you could be selling. Also, you know, working for big companies, for big apparel brands, you have a technical design, which is the person who's doing like tech packs for overseas production, and that has like all the measurements and the finishes on the garments, and it's very detail specific work. So that's a role. Also in big companies, there are people who are just checking like TOPs and lab dips. A TOP is a top of production, or a PP is a pre-production sample, or lab dips, which are like, for instance, like this color pink, we sent a standard to have this, make this exact color pink. This pink was made for Alice and Trixie. This was the pink that we wanted. So what would happen is we give the standard out. It's called a color standard. And then we get back what's called a lab dip, a laboratory dip for short, lab dip. And then we approve the color, and then that's the color that they end up sending us. So, but in big companies, there are many of them that are just looking at lab dips and samples and, you know, production samples that are coming from overseas factories, because they're checking it for quality, for fit, for, you know, making sure it's what they wanted. When a lot of the work is done overseas, when people might have offices and cities, you know, that are not where, or places that where the production is not happening. So they're interfacing with factories, and things are being sent back and forth, you know, via courier, and they have to comment on these things. So, you know, your large companies have teams that are just doing, you know, are involved in the sampling process, or just involved in, you know, in approving production pieces or lab dips or things like that. Like, those are jobs. Also, you know, working in product development. You know, you could be working for a company where you're doing product development for that company. You know, they're a vertical company. They have retail stores. They might buy from other brands, but they also have their own brands. So you're doing product development for their own labels, for in-house labels for stores, for instance. In big stores, you have merchandisers, which is, you have sales team, VP of sales, merchandisers, people that are actually looking at the collection after it's been designed and basically deciding, what's working, what's not working, what's needed, what they want to take out of the collection. A lot of times, companies will, have this line done, and then they'll bring it into a big meeting where they'll have upper management in the meeting, and they'll decide what stays, what goes. In a big company, you have teams of people that are just buying fabrics, for instance, and that's their job. Their job is fabric sourcing. That's all they do all day long. And then you have design teams that they're given this fabric and they're like, this is the fabric that you're going to design with, and they have to design with that fabric. And with the big company, they might be given also a line plan, which is basically a plan of the silhouettes that they want for each delivery. So they're like, well, we want a jacket, we want 3 blouses, we want 2 dresses, we want 1 pant, things like that. And you need to design into these buckets. So there's not a lot of freedom when it comes to, working corporately like that. That's why a lot of people like to work in a smaller design house where they get to witness a lot of what goes on in the industry, and they're not in this cubby hole. Like I was recently at Tommy Hilfiger's office. I don't know if it was one of his offices, but I saw there were designers in cubicles. Like they were sitting in cubicles literally next to each other, and they were and that's what they do. They're and they're working with the overseas factories, and they're creating mood boards, some of them, and things like that. And a mood board is something when you're designing that things that you're inspired by that you want to put on your mood board. Like, maybe it was a fashion destination and you have a picture in Cuba. I'm just making it up, and you love the colors of the Cuban building, so that's where you're drawing your color palette from. And then you have some tears that might have a silhouette or some of your own illustrations, and you start to create like a vibe and a mood, and that's why it's called a mood board. So, so there are people that are, just doing mood boards, things like that. Then you have also fashion forecasting companies that basically these days they're mainly online, and they're bringing all the fashion trends from all over, and they'll be doing shopping in all different major cities, and they'll show you that, and they'll be forecasting color palettes that are going to be happening for the coming seasons, silhouettes that are going to be happening for the coming seasons, trends that are going to be happening for the coming seasons. So there's a lot of roles in a company like that where you are doing fashion trend forecasting, that's really exciting actually, because that's really creative, because you get to travel and explore. And in those companies that that have these services, a lot of them will do like spotlights on different cities or different shops or different stores, or they'll have information for, say you're traveling somewhere, and they'll have maybe a list of the current vintage stores that are there, things like that. So obviously people are assembling all this information, so someone gets to be shopping around and vetting and deciding which of the stores are going to list on the website and things like that. So people are actually doing that. So that's a job in and of itself. So we're talking about fashion forecasting, fabric people. And then you have fabric suppliers. Like you could work for a fabric supplier. You could work for a rep that reps different mills. Mills are the fabric companies. So you could be a fabric rep, which you would be working for the with the designers. You'd be bringing your collection to the designers, or maybe a lot of times designers know what they want and they'll contact you and say, we're looking for cotton PK, I'm making it up, whatever it might be. And then you would have to pull the headers. It's called a header. Like the fabrics all come on, it has it's like a bound top, and the fabric hangs from it, and that's called a fabric header. So you might have to pull fabric headers. Somebody's calling you, they're saying we're scouring the market for some whatever fabric, and then you would pull your headers and send those down for the meeting with the design team, things like that. So you could be working with designers on the fabric side. And then there's also other trims. There's button companies, there's trim companies, there's lace companies, which is again in the fabric, under the fabric category. But even within the fabric category, you could be working for a company that does knits, a company that does lace, a company that does silks, a company that does, wools, different types of wovens, things like that. So you could be working for like a specific type of company within the the fabric industry. There are embroidery companies that do embroidering, and a lot of times there are companies that are doing embroidery only for samples because it's very costly. Say if you're doing like a big embroidery project, it can be very costly to have that done domestically. So if you're in the United States, and you might have, there are companies that will just do embroidery just for your samples, and then for your production, your bulk order, it's a production, so it's called a bulk. That order, would maybe go overseas. But so there are companies that are just really working with various designers, doing all of their sales samples and sampling, and that ends up costing a lot of money. Because you're kind of doing a one-off situation. So these companies exist, they charge a lot of money because they're doing like per piece, so they're doing specialized work, and then most companies will end up doing the vast production, the bulk production overseas. So they charge a premium though for having the development done. That's considered developing. So development costs more money. And again, back to finance, like a CFO, which is a chief financial officer in certain companies, and that person is like running all the numbers. So if you do have an analytical mind and you're good with numbers, there's definitely roles in fashion in that way as well. So people that really keep the company on track and make sure that spending is happening in all the right places, and not spending too much in other places and things like that. So if you're analytical, there's definitely roles in fashion. It's not just about creativity itself. You could be working for a public relations company, and they're basically working on different campaigns and different projects for the brands and things like that. So old public relations used to be like getting articles, like getting TV spots, like getting editorial in magazines, celebrity dressing, things like that. Like that was very big. At this point, anybody that has a PR company, they have to be involved in social media. Like this was like pre-social media. Like that's what they did. They did like celebrity dressing, product placement, editorials, things like that. And yeah, articles, events, fashion shows. That's typically what the PR company got involved with. But now any PR company worth its salt is doing a lot with product placement, with influencers and social media marketing and social media in general. Also in fashion, there are costume design positions, like costume designers for film and television and Broadway shows. So that's a big area. Costume design is huge. And even, when you say costume design, it's like even for television shows that they're wearing, everyday clothing, like that's a costume designer. That's the role of a costume designer. And also, costume design could be, and then as broad and as great as like, doing period movies, like period pieces, period TV shows, where they need to find everything from the 70s or something, that type of thing. So that's another area of fashion as well, to be fashion designer. Stylists, which I touched on, but styling for celebrities, styling for just high net worth individuals that just want someone to help them, to get dressed and show them what's fashionable and give them options. So there's that opportunity. And also, fashion, even, maybe I'm stretching it a little bit, but even like, helping women with their closets and what they should be keeping and letting go of, and, personal shopping. That's another part of the industry, is personal shopping. So shopping for people. Also, if you're creative in doing and sewing, you could be doing alterations. That's a really big market right now. A lot of people are looking to alter their clothing versus, again, in that sustainability realm, like they don't want to keep buying clothing, so they'll get things and they'll alter it to fit them. So alterations has become like a big trend right now, more so than it ever has been that I can recall. So if you have a sewing machine and you know how to sew, that could be something, altering things. Obviously making wedding dresses, you know, doing private client, making things for private clients like that. So after I was looking at the footage from the episode, I realized there were a lot of jobs that I missed, even though I was talking for a really long time. I missed several. And one of the ones that was the funniest that I missed was print design. Alice and Trixie, the DNA of Alice and Trixie is prints, and I did not discuss print design at all. So print design is a job in the fashion industry, and you could either be working for a brand and developing prints for a brand, also designing prints for a print studio. And a print studio basically will sell to fashion brands, among other things. You know, there's prints in home and, you know, journals, things like that. But anyway, for our purpose, you know, definitely printing for fashion, for apparel and accessories and things like that. So that's a big job. And that leads me to the skill set that you need. For instance, you know, Photoshop, InDesign, Illustrator. That could be for, you know, graphic design for an athleisure brand or graphic design for T-shirts, any type of graphics. You know, there's even graphics in luxury. You know, so graphic design. So e-commerce, analytics for e-commerce, like Google Analytics and things like that. So those are jobs, you know, analyzing, you know, seeing who's coming to the website and, you know, the demo, the demographics and things like that. Branding is really big part, you know, branding, logo, brand deck. You know, a brand deck will have your logos and, you know, and how your, you know, variations of your logo, how they can and can't be used, your color palettes, among other things, brand story, things like that, developing a brand story and being able to convey that brand story through messaging. That's also part of fashion. So there are many jobs in fashion. I hope this episode didn't do your head in. I hope it, you know, definitely was designed to give you clarity and not to overwhelm you. Even though I will say I got overwhelmed thinking about all the jobs in the fashion industry. It definitely overwhelmed me to talk about it, but I hope you got value. So we're back to the episode. So if you're getting value, I'd love for you to subscribe, like, and share this content. Spread the love. And jump into the Facebook group, the Fashion Masterclass. That's where I go in live and I respond to comments. So jump into the Facebook group and just, you know, it's exciting. There's so many jobs in fashion, as you can see. And I really hope that whatever I've said provides some clarity for you if you're uncertain about which direction that you want to go in. But just know that there are an abundance of jobs in fashion. So I'm sure if fashion appeals to you, there's definitely a place for you. So I wish you so much success and I'll see you next week.